It truly feels like there is always something going on when it comes to Cracker Barrel, doesn't it? This has to be one of the most talked about restaurants, and I can understand why. In January of 2019, I made a video talking about the success of Cracker Barrel. It was their big 50th anniversary celebration year. They were mostly well-liked and consistently growing, with many of their key financial figures reaching all-time highs. Well, it turns out that I may have made that video right around the peak of Cracker Barrel. Perfect timing for it, because over the past 6.5 years, things have been concerning. Maybe the most jarring thing that I can show you is the value of the company. In early 2019, Cracker Barrel was valued around $4 billion on the stock market. Lately, it has been hanging around $1.4 billion, meaning anybody who bought the stock back then would have lost about 2/3 of their money, while investing in the overall market would have more than doubled your money. So not a great investment there, reflecting that many people have lost their faith in the restaurant. Part of that lack of faith stems from the fact that their earnings have fallen and continue to move in the wrong direction. Even that strong figure there that stands out in 2021 is mostly due to leaseback agreements. They sold 62 of their properties and leased them back from the people that they sold them to, reporting a gain in the process that does not reflect the restaurant operations. Their revenue has actually been higher than ever. However, that may be a little deceptive because the higher sales figures are mostly due to price increases. Lately, they've been experimenting with adjusting prices based on the area, raising them in certain markets while lowering them in others, but overall, they have gone up quite a bit. In that last video, I say that their average check per guest was $10.48. That has since increased to over $14. I know, I'm showing a lot of numbers here, but the core of the issue is that Cracker Barrel has been losing customers. People are not eating there nearly as much, and that is just about the worst problem that a restaurant can have. Even the leader of the company has said, "We're just not as relevant as we once were." So in this video, instead of making a list of the reasons behind the decline like I would normally do, I think it would make more sense in this case to be more casual and simply talk about what has been happening with Cracker Barrel over these past 6.5 years. In October of 2019, Cracker Barrel spent $36 million to acquire the Maple Street Biscuit Company. They had 33 locations at the time of the deal, and about 30 more of them have been opened since, just about doubling in size. Honestly, it seems like a logical fit, and I do not think there were too many people opposing the deal at the time, but looking back, it probably was not the best timing, and we have to question if the company's money and efforts would have been better allocated toward their core struggling business. In 2020, well, obviously, the pandemic hurt their business, but probably more than you would expect, partially because Cracker Barrel has always relied on out-of-town travelers for their business. Going all the way back to that first ever Cracker Barrel, it was built just off of Highway 109 in Tennessee, and for the first dozen or so locations, they also had a gas station attached. They cut out that gas station during the 1970s oil crisis because it became impractical, but continued to rely on the business of travelers. Today, they have around 650 locations that are mostly placed along highways. But the bigger reason that they were impacted by the pandemic is the fact that compared to most other restaurants, they have an older customer base. What I'm saying is that Cracker Barrel is not exactly known for being a cool place for younger people to hang out, though I think they would very much like to be. In 2023, they revealed that over a quarter of their customers were over 65 years old, while less than a quarter of them were under 34 years old. During the pandemic, older individuals were more vulnerable and more likely to stay at home, and I really do believe that this complicated things and potentially exposed a weakness. Those age groups have been slow to return to restaurants since the pandemic, and to complicate things even further, they have been more impacted by inflation compared to other groups, typically being on a fixed income, so they have been kept away by those rising prices I showed earlier. In 2020, Cracker Barrel's comparable restaurant guest traffic decreased over 20% and has failed to make much of a recovery in the years that followed. So, I think they looked at the situation and determined that most of their problems would be solved if they could find a way to become more attractive to a younger demographic. One of their first major efforts to do that was to add alcohol to its menu for the first time ever. Then in 2022, they started offering plant-based sausages, but their biggest moves started in 2023. That year, they hired a controversial new CEO named Julie Masino, which was big news considering she was only the company's 4th ever CEO in over 50 years of business. She was mostly known for having a positive impact at her previous position over at Taco Bell and was hired specifically for her wealth of experience and an innovative spirit, as the company's outgoing CEO put it. Well, less than a year later, it was announced that Cracker Barrel would be cutting its dividend by 80% from $1.30 per share to 25 cents per share so they could fund a 3-year, $700 million transformation plan. It was intended to update the restaurant and make it more relevant again. It involved adding menu items like hash brown casserole, simplifying some of the cooking processes, enhancing its delivery and to-go business, and redesigning the interiors to make them brighter and more modern. Truthfully, I know people have strong opinions about this, but I'm just gonna say that I would not want to be in a position to have to make these decisions, because these are difficult decisions. If you try to make too many changes and updates, you could alienate your current customers and lose what made it special in the first place. But if you don't make any changes, well, then you can become lame and outdated. I would say that Cracker Barrel has built one of the strongest brand identities. It is the only national chain where you can expect to find rocking chairs, a wood-burning fireplace, that wooden peg game, and an excessive number of authentic artifacts on the wall. Like it says on the sign, it is designed to be an old country store and restaurant, and when so much of the appeal comes from being transported back in time, how do you modernize it and make it relevant? I have to wonder if the theme is simply too old at this point. When it started in 1969, it was meant to transport people back 50 years in time, but now another 50 plus years has passed, so that could be a reason it seems to be so much more appealing to older people. I think at this point, people are more nostalgic for Cracker Barrel itself rather than the time period that it represents. I don't know, we could theorize for a while about it, but there are not any clear answers here. I am not exaggerating when I say that literally all of these attempts to revitalize and update the brand have been met with backlash, right down to the plant-based sausages. Most recently, when they tried to simplify that logo by getting rid of that old guy on it, it quickly turned into a much bigger debate than anybody could have expected. I think it is clear that any further changes should be slow and subtle and handled much more carefully. Maybe their best example of updating the experience and attracting younger customers was the introduction of their loyalty program in 2023. Customers earn pegs as rewards, modeled after that old-fashioned peg game that they are known for that I've never been able to solve without cheating, but I guess it has over 6,000 ways that you can win. Honestly, I consider it to be a good game if I only have 2 pegs at the end of it. Let me know your experience, but the app is a great way to blend an old-fashioned game with modern technology while reminding people about their nostalgia for Cracker Barrel. The program has since exceeded their expectations, with over 8 million members joining in less than 2 years, so I do not think updating the brand is an impossible task, but it is incredibly touchy. Cracker Barrel has had plenty of controversy throughout the years, going back to their policy toward hiring gay people in the 1990s and multiple racial discrimination lawsuits in the 2000s. You might remember in 2017, this guy named Brad Bird made a Facebook post about Cracker Barrel firing his wife Nanette after 11 years, and that became a joke on the internet that gave them negative publicity. Through all of this, they were mostly unaffected, but over these past few years, it feels like the public's opinion of them has been more negatively affected than ever before. Maybe it is because most of these changes have been affecting their core customers much more, maybe it is because the changes keep happening seemingly relentlessly, or maybe it is because for a lot of people, these changes have come to represent much larger political issues, with influential people like the President of the United States weighing in on some of it. Along those lines, I also want to mention that Sardar Biglari, one of the biggest shareholders of Cracker Barrel, is also one of the biggest critics toward the company's management and these turnaround efforts. He has made numerous public statements and presentations against it, and has been trying to get onto the board of directors repeatedly for over a decade now. The rest of the shareholders just keep voting against it. He is also the owner of a competing old-fashioned themed restaurant called Steak and Shake, though not as old-fashioned, that has also been making public statements against Cracker Barrel's management. And then from a different angle, we also have to consider a potential decline in the overall guest experience. It is difficult to measure something like this, but when announcing the big transformation plan in 2024, Julie Masino revealed that Cracker Barrel is generally ranked toward the middle when it comes to things like menu appeal, value, convenience, and the overall guest experience. And it can certainly be debated that some of the changes implemented since then have taken away even more from that charm and friendliness they are known for. Again, going back to my video in 2019 2019, most of those top comments are from people speaking very positively about their experiences at Cracker Barrel. Many people viewed them as the place to go to experience Southern hospitality, citing a fun environment and friendly staff. Well, my interpretation is that they're not as widely praised anymore, and my guess is that the comments on this video are going to be much more critical in comparison. So to summarize, if I had to make a list of the potential reasons behind the recent struggles, it would include a poorly timed acquisition, the pandemic of course, an aging customer base, losing their identity, alienating core customers, some bad dining experiences, and negative publicity, specifically throughout social media. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about Cracker Barrel, and has that opinion changed over the past few years? Do you think the big transformation plan has been a mistake? Do you think it just needs to be implemented more carefully? Or maybe you think that they're doing their best in a difficult situation? I guess the big question here is, what does Cracker Barrel have to do to revive themselves and to become more relevant again? Finally, I know that this is a touchy subject, and I did my best to be objective throughout the video, so please just be cool and try not to read too far into anything I said here. It is a great topic that I'm happy to finally revisit after so long, and I believe that it can lead to some great conversations. So any other thoughts you have about Cracker Barrel or anything else in this video, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching.